Amina had always been known for her quiet nature and gentle hands. She worked in Mr. Damilola's grand mansion, a place filled with marble floors, golden chandeliers, and endless hallways that gleamed like mirrors. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, tied her hair neatly, and began cleaning the house before anyone else stirred. She never complained even when the work was heavy or the hours long. She was grateful to have a job at all. Mr. Damilola was one of the richest men in the city. His company built big hotels and shopping centers, and his face often appeared on magazines. Yet even with all his wealth he was not a proud man. He was kind to his workers, and that was one reason Amina respected him deeply. Though she was only a maid, she always felt that he saw her as a person, not just a servant. That afternoon the mansion was full of guests. It was Mr. Damilola's birthday, and many important people had come to celebrate. The air smelled of perfume and roasted food. Soft music played in the background as servants hurried around carrying trays of food and glasses of sparkling juice. Amina was serving drinks in the main hall, trying to stay quiet and unnoticed. She moved carefully, holding a silver tray, her eyes focused on her work. She noticed something unusual near the long table where Mr. Damilola stood talking to a group of businessmen. One of the men beside him kept glancing around nervously. His hands shook slightly as he held a small bottle hidden under his sleeve. Amina frowned but said nothing. Maybe he was just nervous. But then she saw it clearly. He poured something into Mr. Damilola's glass while pretending to talk. Her heart began to pound. Her mind screamed for her to do something, but her feet froze. For a moment she doubted what she saw. Could she be wrong? Maybe it was just juice. But deep inside she knew it wasn't. Something was very wrong. She looked at the glass, then at Mr. Damilola, who was reaching for it with a smile. Without thinking, Amina dropped the tray and ran forward. The sound of the falling tray startled everyone, and before anyone could react, she swung her hand and knocked the glass from Damilola's fingers. It flew across the table, spilling its contents all over the floor. Gasps filled the room. The guests stared in shock. "What are you doing?" one of the guests shouted. The hall fell silent. Amina stood there, shaking, her heart racing so hard she could hear it in her ears. Damilola looked at her with wide eyes, clearly confused. "Amina?" he said softly, trying to understand. I saw something," she stammered, pointing at the man who had poured the drink. He put something in your glass." All eyes turned to the man. He froze, his face pale. The security guard stepped forward immediately. "Is this true?" one of them barked. The man tried to deny it, but when they searched him, they found the small bottle still half full of clear liquid. Within moments he was dragged away, shouting and struggling. The guests began whispering to each other, horrified. Someone called for the police, and Damilola stood still for a long time, processing what had just happened. Amina remained in the same spot, trembling. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew that she had acted before thinking, driven by something inside her that told her it was right. When the police arrived, they confirmed that the liquid was poison. The crowd gasped again, realizing that if not for Amina, the billionaire would have died within minutes. The weight of what had just happened slowly sank in. Damilola turned to Amina, his eyes filled with shock, gratitude, and disbelief. "You saved my life," he said quietly. His voice trembled slightly. Amina lowered her gaze. "I just did what anyone would do, sir," she replied softly, though her voice quivered. She couldn't look him in the eye. She was afraid he might be angry for how she had acted so suddenly, interrupting the celebration. But Damilola wasn't angry. In fact, he couldn't stop staring at her. He saw in her eyes the same courage he once admired in people who risked everything for others. "No," he said firmly. "Not everyone would have done what you did." The party ended early that day. Guests left in a mix of fear and admiration, whispering about the brave maid who saved the billionaire. Some called her foolish for acting without proof, while others called her a hero. Amina didn't think of herself as either. She just felt relieved that her instincts had been right. Later that evening, Damilola called her to his study. The room was quiet, filled with books and the smell of old wood. He sat behind his desk and gestured for her to sit. Amina hesitated, feeling out of place, but obeyed. "You were very brave today," he said. "If you hadn't acted when you did," he paused, looking at the empty glass now resting on the corner of his desk, "I might not be here." Amina looked down at her hands, which were still shaking slightly. "I didn't think, sir. I just moved." "That's what makes it brave," he said gently. "You didn't think of yourself. You thought of saving someone else." She didn't know how to respond. It felt strange to be praised by someone so powerful. She was used to being invisible, The one who cleaned the floors, who stayed in the background, who was forgotten when the lights went out. But tonight, everyone had seen her. As she left the room, she heard him call after her, "Amina?" She turned. "Thank you," he said simply. His voice was warm and full of meaning. That night, as Amina lay in her small room behind the mansion, she stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed the day's events over and over. She could still see the glass falling, the poison spilling, and the look on Damilola's face. She wondered why someone would want to harm such a kind man. She also wondered what would happen now. Would he keep her on as a maid? Would people treat her differently? None of that mattered as much as the quiet satisfaction she felt deep in her heart. For the first time in her life, she realized that even someone small and unnoticed could make a big difference. Her action might have been impulsive, but it came from a place of courage, and that courage had saved a life. The night wind blew softly through her window, carrying the sounds of distant crickets. Amina smiled faintly in the dark, her heart calm. Whatever tomorrow brought, she knew she had done the right thing. And somewhere in the mansion, Mr. Damilola sat in his study, looking out at the night sky, thinking about the maid who had risked everything for him. A simple act that would soon change both of their lives forever. The next morning, the mansion was unusually quiet. The servants whispered among themselves as the news spread through the house and into the city. The man who had poisoned Mr. Damilola's drink had been caught. His name was Tunji, one of the trusted staff members who had worked in the mansion for months. No one could believe he had done something so cruel. The police took him away in handcuffs, and soon the story reached the newspapers. Everyone was talking about how a simple maid had saved the life of one of the country's wealthiest men. Amina woke early as she always did. She swept the hallways, dusted the furniture, and prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Though people now looked at her differently, she didn't act any different. She didn't boast and she didn't seek praise. When one of the cooks said, "You're famous now, Amina," she only smiled faintly and replied, "I'm just doing my work." Later that morning, Mr. Damilola called her to his office. He was sitting behind his desk, reading the morning paper. On the front page was his photo, and beside it, Amina's. The headline read, "Maid saves billionaire's life." He looked up and smiled when she entered. "Amina," he said kindly, "you're in the news today." She looked surprised, almost uncomfortable. "Oh, I didn't know, sir," she said softly. He handed her the paper. "You should read it. They called you a hero." Amina glanced at the page but didn't take it. "I just did what was right, sir," she said quietly. Anyone would have done the same. Damilola leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Not everyone would risk their job, their reputation, maybe even their life, for someone else," he said. "You didn't even hesitate." Her eyes lowered to the floor. "If I had waited, sir, it might have been too late." He nodded slowly, deeply touched by her humility. "You have a good heart, Amina. I won't forget that." After she left his office, she could feel the eyes of the other workers on her. Some smiled warmly at her, but others looked with envy. The mansion had always been full of quiet competition. Some maids whispered that she had done it for attention. Others said she had just been lucky. A few even claimed she was lying, that she made the story up to gain favor with the boss. Amina heard the whispers, but she never responded. She only smiled and continued her work. Her calmness puzzled those who tried to provoke her. Even when one of the maids sneered, "I guess you're the boss's favorite now," Amina only replied, "We're all just doing our jobs." Then she went back to scrubbing the floor, her movements steady and graceful. In truth, Amina didn't care what others thought. She had grown up in hardship, where kindness was rare and survival meant staying strong. She had learned long ago that doing good didn't always bring praise, sometimes it brought jealousy. But she also knew that one's heart mattered more than other people's opinions. Days passed and peace slowly returned to the mansion. Mr. Damilola became even more cautious about those around him. He reduced the number of guests and held smaller gatherings. But one thing changed: he began to notice Amina more. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that showed genuine respect. When he saw her cleaning the hall, he would greet her kindly. When he noticed her working late, he would tell her to rest. One evening, as Amina was polishing the staircase, Damilola's younger sister Ife came home from abroad. She had heard all about the incident and was eager to meet the maid who had saved her brother. When she saw Amina, she smiled warmly. "So you are Amina?" she said. "I've heard so much about you. You must be very brave." Amina blushed slightly. "I just did what I thought was right, ma'am." Ife laughed softly. "You're humble too. My brother says you're the reason he's still alive. That means you're part of this family now." Amina didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her part of a family before. She had always been the outsider, the one who served others from the shadows. But that simple sentence from Ife warmed her heart more than she expected. Over the next few weeks, Damilola's attitude toward his staff changed. He started paying attention to the conditions they worked under. He improved their meals, reduced their long hours, and raised their salaries slightly. Some of the older workers whispered that Amina had softened his heart. One afternoon, as Amina was hanging laundry outside, an older gardener named Baba Tund approached her. "Amina," he said gently, "you've brought light into this house. Before you came, everyone worked with fear. Now there is kindness again." Amina smiled modestly. "I didn't do anything special, Baba." He chuckled. "Sometimes doing what is right is the most special thing of all." As the days went by, more people began to respect her quietly. When she walked through the halls, the same workers who once mocked her now nodded politely. Even the guests who came to visit looked at her with curiosity, whispering, "That's the girl who saved him." Still, Amina remained the same. She continued waking up early, cooking, cleaning, and making sure every corner of the mansion was spotless. She never allowed pride to enter her heart. At night, when she lay in her small room, she prayed in silence, thanking God for giving her the strength to act that day. Damilola, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about how close he had come to death. He often replayed the moment in his mind: the glass, Amina's sudden movement, the sound of it shattering. He had trusted many people in his business, but it was the humble maid, the one everyone overlooked, who had shown true loyalty. It made him see life differently. One evening he invited Amina and all the staff to a small gathering in the garden. There were no rich guests, no reporters, just his workers and family. He stood up to speak, holding a microphone. "I want to thank someone special today," he said. "Someone who reminded me that courage does not come from power or money, but from the heart." The staff clapped quietly, glancing around. They all knew who he meant. He turned toward Amina, who stood shyly at the back. "Amina, come forward." She hesitated, but everyone urged her on. She stepped forward, her eyes downcast. Damilola smiled and handed her a small envelope. "This is not enough to repay what you did," he said, "but it's a small gift to show my gratitude." Amina looked surprised. "Sir, you don't have to. I didn't save you for a reward." "I know," Damilola replied gently. "That's exactly why you deserve it." The crowd clapped, and Amina felt her cheeks warm. She thanked him softly, clutching the envelope close. Inside later she found a note of appreciation and a small bonus, more money than she had ever held in her life. That night, when she returned to her room, she looked at the note again. The handwriting was neat and elegant. It simply said, "For your courage, honesty, and heart. Thank you for reminding me what goodness looks like." Amina smiled to herself and placed the note carefully in her small box of personal treasures. A few letters, a broken bracelet, and now this gift. She didn't realize it yet, but this was only the beginning. Her courage had not only saved a life, it had started something much bigger. It had changed the way people saw her, and even the way Damilola saw the world. And deep down, though she didn't know it, her quiet goodness was about to open doors she had never dreamed could exist. Amina had never been inside Mr. Damilola's office before that day. The room was large, filled with tall bookshelves, shining awards, and pictures of him shaking hands with powerful people. When the house manager told her the boss wanted to see her, she grew nervous. She wondered if she had done something wrong. She wiped her hands on her apron and knocked softly on the heavy door. "Come in," Damilola's deep voice called. She stepped in quietly, her heart beating fast. He was sitting behind his desk, reading some papers, but when he looked up, he smiled kindly. "Amina, please sit," he said, pointing to a chair across from him. She hesitated. "Sir, I can stand," she replied politely. He chuckled. "You've saved my life, Amina. The least you can do is sit when I ask." Blushing, she sat down carefully on the edge of the chair. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. Damilola studied her for a moment. He had seen her many times before, sweeping the floors, cleaning the windows, carrying heavy trays. But now, looking at her closely, he realized how much strength and calmness she carried for someone so young. "I've been thinking a lot since that day," he began. "You risked yourself to protect me. Most people would have looked away. Why did you do it?" Amina looked down at her hands. "Because it was the right thing to do, sir. My mother always said we should help others even if they never help us back." Damilola nodded slowly, touched by her words. "Tell me about your family," he said gently. She hesitated again, unsure if she should share such personal things. But his voice was kind and she could see he truly wanted to know. I lost my parents when I was 12, she said softly. My father was a farmer. My mother sold vegetables in the market. When they passed, I moved to the city to find work. I've been working since then, washing clothes, cleaning houses, and doing whatever I can. I never went to school for long. But I've learned things by watching and listening. There was a long silence after she spoke. Damilola leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. You've been through so much, he said quietly. And yet you never gave up. Amina smiled faintly. Life doesn't stop when things are hard, sir. We just have to keep moving. Her simple words struck him deeply. Here was a young woman who had faced poverty, loneliness, and exhaustion, yet she carried herself with dignity and grace. He thought about how often people in his world complained about small things, bad coffee, traffic, slow internet, while Amina walked through life with quiet strength. He stood up suddenly and walked to the window. Outside, the garden was glowing under the sunlight. Amina, he said finally, turning back to her. I don't want you to remain a maid forever. Her eyes widened in confusion. Sir? I see potential in you, he said firmly. You're smart, brave, and loyal. You deserve a better life, one where you can use your mind, not just your hands. Amina looked down quickly, tears filling her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything yet, he replied. I've made a decision. I want you to join one of my company offices for training. You'll learn office work, communication, computers, management. You'll have a salary, a uniform, and proper support. If you do well, you can grow. You have it in you, Amina. She looked up shocked. Sir, I can't. I don't know how to do those things. He smiled. That's why it's called training. You'll learn. Her heart beat faster. But, who will clean here if I go? Damilola laughed softly. Don't worry about that. We'll find someone else. You've done enough cleaning for one lifetime. Amina wiped the corner of her eyes quickly, embarrassed that tears had escaped. She had dreamed of a better life so many times, but those dreams always faded when she woke up to her reality. And now someone was offering her a chance, a real one. Thank you, sir, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I don't know how to repay you. You already did, he replied kindly. You saved my life. Now let me help you build yours. The next few days passed like a dream. The mansion staff buzzed with gossip about Amina's sudden opportunity. Some congratulated her, saying she deserved it. Others whispered that she was only lucky. A few were jealous, saying the boss had favorites now. But Amina didn't pay attention. She focused on preparing herself. She borrowed a neat blouse from another maid and polished her worn shoes until they shone. When the company driver came to pick her up for her first day, she felt both nervous and excited. It was the first time she had ever been inside an office building. The tall glass structure seemed to touch the sky. As she walked through the lobby, she saw people in suits moving quickly, typing on computers, talking on phones. She felt small but determined. At the front desk, a friendly woman smiled at her. You must be Amina, she said. Mr. Damilola told us about you. Welcome. Amina nodded shyly. Thank you. They showed her to the training room where a few other young workers sat. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Saad, began teaching them how to use a computer. Amina listened carefully, writing notes in a small notebook she carried. Her hands trembled slightly on the keyboard, but she practiced patiently until she got it right. Days turned into weeks and Amina learned quickly. She studied every evening, staying late to review her lessons. Her trainers admired her dedication. When they asked what motivated her, she said simply, because someone believed in me and I don't want to disappoint him. Meanwhile, Damilola often checked in on her progress. He would receive reports from the trainers and smile proudly when he saw her name at the top of every list. One afternoon he visited the office unannounced. When he entered the room, Amina was standing in front of the class, helping another trainee fix a computer issue. She turned around, surprised to see him. Sir, she said, almost dropping her notebook. He laughed gently. Relax, Amina. I just came to see how my best trainee is doing. The whole class clapped and Amina blushed deeply. It felt unreal. A few months ago she was sweeping floors. Now she was standing in an office, learning skills that could change her future. Later that evening, when she returned to her small room in the mansion, she sat on her bed and stared at her reflection in the mirror. She could hardly recognize herself. Her posture was more confident, her eyes brighter. She whispered to herself, Mama, Baba, I hope you can see me. I'm trying my best. She thought about how one act of courage, one punch to save a man's life, had opened a door to a new world. And deep down she promised herself that she would never waste this chance. From that day on, Amina's journey took a new direction. Her life, once filled with quiet struggle, now carried hope and purpose. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she believed she could reach for something greater. She had walked through pain, fear, and hardship, and now at last she was walking toward a dream. Amina had never imagined her life would change so much. A few months ago she was just a maid sweeping floors and serving tea. Now she walked through the tall glass doors of one of the biggest companies in the city, wearing a modest uniform and carrying a folder under her arm. Every day she arrived early, greeting everyone with her gentle smile. Many of her co-workers admired her dedication, though some still whispered that she had only gotten the job because the billionaire trusted her. Amina never paid attention to gossip. She focused on learning, working hard, and doing everything right. Damalola watched her progress from a distance. He often remembered the day she saved his life. He had thought bravery came from wealth or power, but this quiet young woman had shown him what true courage looked like. Whenever he saw her working late, he felt proud of his decision to give her a chance. Amina studied how the office worked. She asked questions, stayed after hours to learn computer tasks, and helped anyone who needed support. When others argued, she remained calm and respectful. Slowly, even those who doubted her began to admire her patience. One morning, the company faced a terrible problem. A financial report showed that a large amount of money had gone missing. People began to panic. Some employees accused others and the atmosphere turned tense. Damalola looked worried for the first time in weeks. The company's reputation was at stake, and if the news spread, investors could pull out. Amina sat quietly at her desk, reading through the old files. Something didn't feel right. She noticed that some numbers in the report were copied and pasted from an earlier document. That meant someone had changed the figures on purpose. She stayed in the office long after everyone left, comparing files carefully. After hours of checking, she discovered the truth. One of the senior managers had been moving company money into his own private account. The next morning, Amina knocked on Damalola's office door. He looked up, surprised to see her so early. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "I think I found something important." She placed the papers on his desk and explained everything she had discovered. Damalola read through the pages, his eyes widening with every line. He immediately called security and the finance department. After a full investigation, her findings were confirmed. The manager was guilty. The company had almost lost millions, but Amina's honesty saved it just in time. When the meeting ended, Damalola asked her to stay. For a moment, he just looked at her, shaking his head in disbelief. "You have saved me twice," he said finally, his voice warm and proud. "Once my life and now my company." Amina smiled shyly and lowered her eyes. "I only did what was right, sir," she said quietly. He leaned back in his chair. "You keep saying that, but not everyone chooses what is right when it is hard. You could have stayed silent and protected yourself, but you spoke up. That takes courage." Amina felt her heart swell with emotion. She remembered all the days she had spent cleaning floors in silence, dreaming that her life might mean something more. Now she realized that honesty and hard work had brought her further than she ever imagined. Word spread quickly through the company. People began to treat Amina with new respect. Colleagues who once ignored her now came to her for advice. The directors praised her dedication, and even the investors sent messages of thanks. For the first time, Amina felt truly valued for her integrity. Despite the praise, she remained humble. She still helped clean the break room when needed, still greeted the guards at the gate, and still sent money home to her family every month. Her past kept her grounded. Damalola began to see her not just as an employee but as an example for everyone in his company. He started a new rule that every worker, no matter their position, must be treated with respect. "It was a maid who saved my life," he said in a meeting. "Never forget that dignity has nothing to do with status." Amina didn't realize how much she had inspired others. Some employees who used to compete now began working together. The office atmosphere changed, people became kinder, more patient, more helpful. Even the customers noticed. Weeks later, Damalola called a company gathering. He wanted to publicly thank Amina for what she had done. The employees stood around as he took the stage and began to speak. "Sometimes," he said, "the smallest act of courage can change everything. Amina showed me that honesty and kindness are the real foundations of success." He handed her a framed certificate of recognition and a key. The crowd clapped and cheered as he explained, "This key is for your new office. From today, you are the company's assistant manager." Amina froze for a second, tears filling her eyes. The crowd continued cheering. She never expected such honor. She stepped forward, thanked Damalola, and said, "This company gave me hope when I had none. I will continue to serve with the same heart I always had." That evening when she left the office, she stood outside looking at the tall building glowing under the sunset. She remembered her small room in the servants' quarters, her long nights of cleaning, and her quiet prayers for a better future. Now she was living that future. The following week she began her new role. She worked harder than ever, managing staff, helping solve issues, and training others. Damalola often watched her with quiet admiration. He knew that Amina's honesty had not only saved his company but had changed its culture entirely. Sometimes he would tell visitors her story. "Amina," he would say, "is proof that loyalty and truth are worth more than money. She is a reminder that good people still exist." Amina continued to shine, though she never sought attention. Her reward was seeing people trust her and knowing that she had made a difference. She had learned that true success was not about being rich, it was about being right even when it was difficult. Every night, before she went to bed, she thanked God for the strange twist of fate that had brought her from a maid to a respected leader. And in her heart, she promised that no matter how far she went, she would never forget where she came from or the courage it took to stand up that first day and do what was right. Years passed, and Amina's life changed more than she had ever imagined. The young maid who once swept floors in silence was now one of the most respected managers in Damalola's company. Her office overlooked the busy city filled with cars, lights, and tall buildings. Every morning she still arrived early, carrying her same warm smile. She greeted everyone, from the guards at the gate to the top executives, with the same kindness she had shown since her first day. People loved her. New employees whispered her story to each other, almost like a legend. "That's Amina," they would say. "She's the one who saved the boss's life." Others admired her more quietly, inspired by how far she had come. Amina didn't let the attention change her. She worked with the same honesty, the same humility, and the same heart that had guided her from the beginning. Damalola often came to her office to talk. Even though he was still a billionaire and the head of the company, he treated Amina like a trusted friend. Sometimes they shared laughter about the past. "Can you believe it?" Damalola would say with a grin. "You punched my glass away and changed everything. Who knew one brave moment could rewrite our lives?" Amina would laugh softly. "I didn't think. I just acted, sir." He would nod. "That's what makes it special. You followed your heart." Their friendship became something everyone in the company admired. It wasn't about money or status, it was about respect, loyalty, and trust. Amina had once been a maid, but now she was part of the leadership team, known for her fairness and strong sense of justice. Outside of work, Amina used her new income wisely. She moved her mother to a comfortable house in the countryside. Her younger siblings went to good schools, and she made sure they never went hungry again. She helped her neighbors too, repairing the village well and paying for books for local children. People in her hometown looked up to her as an example of hope, proof that no one was too poor or too small to change their destiny. One day, Amina was invited to speak at a youth event organized by the company. Hundreds of young people sat in the audience, curious to hear her story. She stood on the stage in her simple blue dress, feeling a mix of nervousness and pride. Damalola introduced her personally. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling warmly, "meet the woman who once saved my life, and in doing so, taught me the meaning of true strength." The audience clapped loudly as Amina stepped forward. She looked around, remembering her own days of struggle, and began to speak softly. "I was once a maid," she said. "I had nothing but faith and hope. Every day I told myself that doing the right thing mattered even when no one was watching. That one choice, one brave act, changed my life forever. But more than that, it taught me that kindness and honesty can open doors that money never can." She shared her story, the long hours of cleaning, the moment she saved Damalola, the new chance he gave her, and the lessons she learned through hard work. People listened in silence, some with tears in their eyes. When she finished, the hall filled with applause. Young people came to her afterward, saying she had inspired them to believe in themselves again. After the event, Damalola found her standing near the door, watching the sunset through the big windows. "You've become an inspiration," he said quietly. Amina smiled. "I only wanted to live a good life, sir." He chuckled. "And in doing that you've changed the lives of many others too." Years continued to pass, and the bond between Amina and Damalola grew stronger. They worked side by side, expanding the company and creating opportunities for people from poor backgrounds. Amina made sure every employee was treated fairly, remembering how it felt to be invisible. Her leadership style was simple. She led with compassion. She believed that a company was not built by money alone, but by the people who gave their hearts to their work. Whenever reporters asked Damilola about his success, he always mentioned Amina. "She punched me once," he would say laughing, "and it changed my life forever." People laughed when they heard it, but the story carried a powerful message. It reminded everyone that courage doesn't depend on wealth or education. It comes from character. One afternoon, as Amina walked through the office halls, she saw a new maid struggling to carry a heavy tray. Without thinking, she hurried over to help. "Be careful," she said gently. "These floors can be slippery." The maid looked surprised. "Thank you, ma'am," she said shyly. Amina smiled. "I was once in your shoes," she said. "Remember, every small act of honesty and hard work counts." The maid nodded, inspired by her kindness. Later that day, Damilola stopped by her office. He looked around at the photos on her wall, pictures of her family, her village, and her team. "You've built something special here," he said. Amina looked at him and smiled. "We both did," she replied. He nodded. "You taught me that real wealth isn't in the bank. It's in the heart." That evening, when the office lights dimmed and the building grew quiet, Amina sat at her desk, reflecting on her journey. She thought of the young girl she used to be, scared, tired, unsure of the future. She remembered the day she stood in that grand dining room, punching the glass out of a billionaire's hand without thinking twice. That single moment of courage had shaped the rest of her life. She opened the drawer and took out a small framed photo, a picture of her village home. She kept it as a reminder of where she started. Looking at it, she whispered softly, "I did it." Outside, the city lights sparkled like stars. Amina smiled, knowing she had turned her pain into purpose, her fear into strength, and her kindness into success. She wasn't just a manager, she was a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't rise above their circumstances. That night, before going home, Damilola sent her a message. "Thank you again, Amina. Not just for saving my life, but for showing me what life truly means." She read the message, tears filling her eyes. She typed back a simple reply. "I only did what was right, sir." And in that quiet moment she realized something. Doing what's right is what truly changes the world. Amina had gone from a poor maid to a respected leader, from serving drinks to serving others with compassion. Her story had touched hearts across the country. Schools taught it as a lesson about courage. Newspapers wrote about her as the maid who saved a billionaire. But to her, she was still just Amina, the girl who believed that goodness always finds a way. As she left the building that night, the guards waved at her. "Good night, Madame Amina," one said with a smile. She waved back warmly. "Good night," she replied. She walked out into the cool evening air, the city glowing all around her. In her heart, she carried peace, not the peace that comes from money, but the peace that comes from knowing you've lived with courage and kindness. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning of another beautiful chapter. The end.